Hello and welcome to Blood Red's Transfer Daily. I'm joined by my fellow Liverpool.com writer, Dave Comerford, and we're going to be talking a little bit about Divock Origi today and also Neco Williams. First of all, Origi has finally been confirmed as an AC Milan player. It feels strange to see him in a shirt other than that of Liverpool. What do you make of the deal, and do you think it's going to be a success, Dave?
I mean, it definitely is strange to see him in that shirt. We say that a lot, and we hear people say that a lot when they talk about a player joining another club. But I think with Origi, because of the kind of unique bond that he has with Liverpool fans, then it actually feels true in this case. In terms of whether it'll be a success, I think it's interesting because, you know, Origi had a clause in his Liverpool contract where he had to make a certain number of appearances and then it would have triggered an extension. So I'm not sure what that was. I think he ended up making just short of 20 over the course of the whole season or just above. So he didn't actually play that much when he was at Liverpool. So it's a bit of a gamble for Milan in a sense because you don't really have a big sample of the level he's at the moment, certainly playing for a club. But he has scored a decent number of goals last season, much improved compared to how he did when he got opportunities in 2020, 21. So from that point of view, it looks like it could work out pretty well for them. You look at the actual striker situation at AC Milan, and there probably isn't someone who kind of has the spot like nailed down. Really, you've got the likes of Giroud and Rebic there, but I don't think Origi would look at them and think that was too daunting in terms of competition, given the levels and the level they're at this stage of their career, and Giroud certainly being a little bit older. So I think the ingredients are there for it to be a success, and I could see him being someone who can certainly reach sort of the 15 goal mark maybe in Serie A, and then obviously he'll be playing Champions League football as well. So interesting to see how he does on that front.
Absolutely. I think in regards to the appearance clause, I think it was only league appearances that counted in it. So obviously, Origi was never going to get to that level. But in terms of Liverpool, where does his departure sort of leave Liverpool? Obviously, Origi wasn't a key member of the team, but he did score a lot of important goals over his Liverpool career. Do you see anyone in the squad sort of replacing his ability to make an impact?
Well, I think Liverpool's strategy is really interesting because what they've done is they've essentially lost two of their reserve attackers in Minamino and Origi, and they've only replaced them with one player in Carvalho, who they're essentially looking at as someone who can play across the front line and in midfield. So he's been asked to really cover a lot of roles within the squad. So I think that's interesting in terms of it's not really like for like in terms of squad size. You just kind of banking on the versatility of a player. So that's intriguing. I think what we might see is, and I think we've written about this on the site, is Kate Gordon potentially being the beneficiary in terms of getting more minutes within the front three, whether he, be worth the amount of minutes that we saw Minamino and Origi get, kind of 20 games. I'm not sure at this stage, but you can certainly kind of ascend towards kind of double figure appearances. You'd hope. So I think that's an option, but there's a consideration here for Liverpool that Salah's obviously signed this new contract. We know that Origi was on £100,000 a week from reports that have emerged kind of since he left. So really, they're kind of clearing the wages off the books. If you think about Minamino and Origi's wages, you take them off, Carvalho won't be earning that much because he's just come from a championship side. He's still very young. And I think it's kind of part of a process of really saving the extra money that you're going to be spending on Mo Salah. And I think that is a consideration really for Liverpool in terms of, I think it's unlikely that they'll add another attacker into the mix. In terms of the other part of your question about who can kind of make a similar impact off the bench, I'm not sure anyone can really. The ability that Origi had to come up with these big moments is kind of like unparalleled, I suppose. So it'd be interesting to see. I think with Nunez coming in, what you're looking at is a first choice front line of Salah, Nunez, and Diaz. So it's going to come down then to Jota and Firmino to be the game changers off the bench for the most part. Obviously, they'll start games themselves in their own right. And really, you need to see an improvement from Jota in terms of his output as a substitute, because I think last season he only scored one goal coming off the bench, and he came off the bench a fair bit, so that's not great. And I think with Firmino, maybe you don't look at him so much as a goal scorer off the bench, but as someone, because he's kind of a false nine as opposed to an out-and-out striker or a poacher, like the other options are, then he can kind of change how the game sort of plays out stylistically, I suppose. So there's different things you'd ask of them, but yeah, certainly it'll be very hard to replicate what we saw Origi do.
Yeah, but it's interesting with Firmino because I believe 45% or around that figure of his goal contributions came off the bench last season. He had a sort of knack last season for not just scoring but getting assists as well off the bench. So maybe potentially he could be the new Origi in that sense. But it's interesting that you mentioned Kyde Gordon as well. Obviously, we saw several academy players other than Gordon as well in Liverpool pre-season training, and I suppose it's an opportunity for those youngsters as well to maybe get a couple of games in the League Cup and the FA Cup or something like that.
Yeah, well, I think with Gordon, I've read that he's actually not training with the main group at the moment. I think there might be an injury at play there that he sort of picked up at the tail end of last season that he's still recovering from, which in a way it is a bit of an issue for him, I think, because this sort of period now is really valuable, I think, for the young players in terms of making that impression. And obviously he can join up with the squad later in pre-season, but hopefully that doesn't kind of hurt him, because I think a lot of the young players that are in that group now, that Linders has called up to join with the first team, while it's certainly not the full contingent at Kirby, I think they'll be looking at it as an opportunity to kind of make an impression. And it's interesting, really, you look at the attack, and Gordon's really the outstanding one in the academy in terms of who can actually be the next first team graduate. We saw a couple of players play against AC Milan when there was that kind of Champions League dead rubber, I think, and they featured an FA Cup game as well, maybe against Shrewsbury. So they might, be in the equation for it. One player I think is quite interesting is Oakley Cannonier from the under-18s. I think he had a ridiculous goal-scoring record at that level. I think it was sort of better than a goal a game or something like that. And I think he was the top scorer in the under-18 Premier League as well. So still probably too early for him to be, in the mix for this season. Maybe 2 seasons down the line or something, you're looking at giving him kind of the first team minutes, provided obviously that he can carry that form up to kind of under 23 level, which I think is where he'll be playing most of his football this season.
Yeah, with Cannonier, I think the only concern really for me is about his height. He's, I think, around 5'6", 5'7", which is unprecedented almost for a modern striker anyway. But the likes of Malcolm and Frauendorf also stand out for me. And I think in regards to Gordon, unfortunately, he's been struggling with an injury since sort of late February, early March time, which means he hasn't really featured for the academy sides either towards the end of last season. So hopefully he'll be back sooner rather than later. But sort of pivoting on from that, back to actual transfer news, Nat Phillips seems like he's going to be leaving Liverpool. It doesn't look like it's going to be a permanent transfer to Bournemouth. It looks like it's going to be another loan deal. Are you surprised by that, or do you think it's still a good deal for Liverpool to get him out on loan?
Well, I actually think kind of yes to both of your questions there in a way. I'm surprised that he's still going to be on Liverpool's books. I thought this would be the summer that they sold him. I think when I think it was last summer, I think he signed a new 5-year contract last summer, or certainly it was quite recent. So Liverpool kind of have that protection there in terms of they can continue to loan him out for now, and it's not going to hurt his value too much. The thing I like about this deal, and the thing that I'd actually quite like to see Liverpool attempt with Neco Williams as well, personally, is if you loan him to a Premier League club, ideally a club that's just been promoted. I think Forest are interested in Neco Williams, for example. If you loan those 2 players to those clubs, they're going to get the game time at Premier League level. And I think, they're both capable of delivering at Premier League level. We've seen that from Phillips already. And Neco Williams as well has come on quite a lot in his development. So I think he would be able to give a good account of himself at Forest, for example. So if they then deliver at Premier League level for a season, and both being fairly young players at the same time, then I think their value goes up by 5-10 million, and that would look like a bit of a masterstroke for Liverpool, really, in terms of doing that. Because right now they're both kind of 15 million mark, and you can push that closer to 20 definitely if, like I say, they show that they can perform over a full season as a starter for a Premier League club.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, obviously Liverpool would like to make profit on them now in terms of their net spend, but if you play that gamble almost, then like you said, it could pay more dividends in the future. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining in. I think that about wraps it up for today. Thanks, Dave, for joining me. And as always, there's going to be plenty of Blood Red content going out today and on written content as well on Liverpool.com. So make sure to check all of that out.